Hey everybody, Paul here from Jesus Loves Addicts, and boy, I hope you're seatbelted because you're about to embark on a real journey. Our guest today is Kristy Bell, and what a story she has to tell. In fact, this is going to be another two-parter, so hang in there, and at the end of part one, stay tuned for a preview of part two. You're in for a ride.
And I'm still taking my kids to church, and I'm shooting up in the bathroom of my house, and I'm going out like the best dressed mom with my kids and my husband. We're going to church, and I'm singing on the praise team, and I'm in the altars, and I'm doing the drama team, and I'm doing the small groups.
You're shooting heroin.
And I'm shooting heroin.
Let's be honest about recovery.
The rewards, the challenges.
Let's talk about our failures.
We are flawed people, after all.
Let's challenge the stigmas that weigh us down.
Because while most of us are looked at,
Few of us are seen.
Let's talk about addiction.
And how Christ overcomes our weaknesses.
Because we are loved.
because we are loved.
Because we are loved.
We are loved.
We are
Because
loved.
we are loved.
My name is Kristy Bell. I'm 44 years old, and today my life is pretty amazing, but it hasn't always been that way. I was bound by a severe drug addiction for over 20 years, an addiction that led me to homelessness, an addiction that eventually caused me to walk away from everyone in my life that loved me the most, including my 3 beautiful children. I was missing, presumed dead. But on March 22nd, 2023, the Lord found me. He lifted me up and placed me exactly where He needed me to be to finally live the life that He had always intended for me. This is my story.
Hey there, and welcome back to the Jesus Loves Addicts podcast. I'm Kathryn, and this is Paul. Today, I'm super excited. Well, I'm excited about every new episode, but I'm excited today because the lady we're going to be speaking with, Kristy Bell, just has special meaning to me. I actually was her intake counselor at another program a year and a half ago, and Kristy was missing and presumed dead. And just her story of literally coming back to life is just one that I know that everyone's going to want to hear, a powerful one of God's redemption and restoration. So, Kristy, I just want to thank you so much.
Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, my goodness. Amen. So as somebody who did not have that background with you, my interest is piqued. Where does your story begin?
Well, I had a wonderful childhood. I was born to the most amazing set of godly parents that a girl could ever ask for. I'm the oldest of 3 and great siblings. We just had a wonderful life. My parents had us in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesdays, always. My grandfather's a Southern Baptist preacher, so God has always been a part of my life since the day I was born. I had no reason for my life to turn out the way that it ended up. Like a lot of people have the trauma and the things that they go through. I didn't. I was so blessed. My parents were so present. If we had an event, if we had a game, they were there, did homework with us. We took family trips. Everything was wonderful. When I was 12, we had to move. My dad's job relocated us to Mobile from Hattiesburg, and I became angry. I became a different kid. I didn't want to move. You know, at 12, you think your whole life is lived, and like you've got the greatest friends that you're ever going to have, and
You'll never make any new ones.
You're
Not
never
like
going to
that.
make any new ones. So I became angry, and when we moved to Mobile, it was the summer before I was starting my 8th grade year, and I knew, like, I got to find friends. I've got to figure out where I fit in, so I'm not starting this new school not knowing anybody. And that particular summer, I met some friends that were not the greatest kind of kids. They had a rough home life. They were doing, smoking, doing things that my parents wouldn't let me do, listening to all the cool music, doing the things that I was never allowed to do, and I wanted to belong. That was when looking back now that I realized I started having that spirit of, I got to fit in. I got to, that codependency is when that developed, when I was 12. Like how you feel about me is how I feel about myself. So I've got to fit in.
Okay.
And I started smoking cigarettes, and I had sex for the first time at 12 years old because everybody was doing it. And I wanted to belong so bad.
Had you ever been exposed to anyone that was doing those things at all prior to moving?
Never.
And eighth grade is pretty emotional anyway.
It was. And so I just started running with the wrong crowd. And my grades, once I started school that year, my grades started slipping because I was still, hanging out with the wrong people. And it wasn't cool to like be in all the smart classes and to make the good grade. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just wasn't cool. And my mindset was just so fixated on wanting to belong that whatever, okay, so I'm not gonna, I'm gonna go sneak out of the house and, who cares about studying because I want to belong. I want to fit in. And,
Kristy, if we can, this is such an important piece already that I love that you're talking about, because there's even kind of a stereotype that we associate sometimes too, right? You said, I know a lot of people have trauma in their past, but I had this great child. I would be willing to bet that if we went back through all of the episodes, the split between good childhood and dysfunctional is probably even. And so I think there's such a great story unfolding here to the absolute truth that addiction is an equal opportunity
it doesn't discriminate.
illness. But why? But why? And this is the part that I'm wondering if you can expand on. Even before we get to your addiction, although some of that's trying or starting, we really see the innate, not just the brokenness of the life in general, but within ourselves, right? So here you were, you hadn't been exposed to anything. You moved to this new environment. Suddenly there's this exposure to everything. And what does the flesh want to do?
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I know I'm just as long-winded, but I'm so really intrigued by this piece of it, because I think it's something that we don't talk about often. And that is, oftentimes you'll hear parents criticized for protecting their kids. Like, well, you can't protect them forever. Well, that may be true. I may not be able to protect them forever, but there is worth in protecting them while they're kids because of the flesh. This is such I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because I just feel like this is such a topic that could be developed even unto itself. Is that...
And a big thing, and something that has always bothered me that I would hear people say is, if you're too hard on them, they're going to rebel and all that. If a child wants, they're going to do, because let me tell you, my parents were strict, but they were not over the top strict. They protected us and wanted us to do the right things, didn't want us to make the wrong choices, but they still allowed us to be kids and to, have free will within reason. And so my thing wasn't, they did the best that they could. They tried so hard. And even when I was getting in trouble in school, my grades started slipping. I started getting in trouble for sneaking out and smoking. I'm still in church. We were in church. That's something you'll see through my whole life, even when I became an adult. But they still blamed themselves a lot, because they felt like we're not doing something. And
we missed something.
I caused from a very young age, from 12 up, I was a big source of my parents' wonderful marriage, but when there was tension, it was me. Because I'm a daddy's girl. Always have been. This is where I get emotional, because my dad would fight to the death for me. My mother loves me unconditionally, but my mom was the one that disciplinarian wanted, lay down the hammer. But in my daddy's eyes, I could do no wrong, to the point of it sometimes causing dissension between them, because she would, when I would try to sneak out or, they would find out I was doing certain things, she would want to go in for the kill and get real strict. You're not leaving your room. You're not. And they would argue about it, because he's like, we're not going to do that. Like, she's a kid. He didn't see things for the road that it was taking. And I think my mom did. Very early on.
Well, you were the apple of his eye, and so that he saw what he wanted to see. Yeah.
And for some, it's literally, it goes against their nature, their flesh nature, to say no.
And something else I was going to bring up that about like childhood. So my grandfather, I thought for years, the only source of addiction in my family, because no one else has struggled with addiction that I knew of until I became an adult. I found out my dad's dad was a severe severe alcoholic. And mom and dad, some of their dates when they first started dating would be going and picking him up out of ditches and bars and all of that. And when I was born, this is what's so crazy to me. When I was born, he was still heavily in his addiction. And my parents said, you will not be in her life if you don't get some help. Nothing else had worked. He wouldn't get help. But when they threatened to take me out of his life, he entered treatment and never looked back.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I'm like, man. And then out of us 3 siblings, all of my cousins, I was that one that he turned his life around for, but I was the only one that had the same
into
life.
addiction.
So that's something that's, I'm just, wow, that's just crazy to me. But so I was, running with the wrong crowds. By 15, I was experimenting with alcohol, going to parties, real good at manipulating. I would tell my parents I'm going to be over here, but I'm going over here. I remember one time, it was stupid. It was, you can go to remember there's Bel Air and Springdale Mall-Mobile. You can go to Bel Air, but don't go to Springdale. Well, of course, I'm going to run across the highway. I'm going to go to the one you
told me not to go to.
Well, then there's a news anchor and a whole camera crew interviewing teenagers about school and different things, and they turn and come up, and here I am. And so I got busted from being across the street at the mall on camera that night on the news.
On the news.
Just crazy stuff. So I found myself rebelling more and more, and but still going to church. If there was a drama program, I was in it at church. Youth choir, everything you can imagine. So I had my church friends. And I had my school friends. My church friends were the ones my parents wanted me to hang out with. Let's invite them. Mom wouldn't let me invite school friends to a lot of things because she knew they weren't good people. And she's like, you always flock to the ones that come from the rough backgrounds that have the problems. And when she meant that, it was not her being judgmental. It was her looking out for me going, it's pulling you down. We want you over here. And then when you're trying to keep me from these people, with the personality that I had, this is where I want to be, because I felt like I fit in better with the rougher kids. I didn't feel like I fit in with the uppity kids at church. They weren't ugly to me. People were great, but I just felt like I belonged. I had something to offer the underdog. I've always flocked to those kind of people because I was the one that had it all together, I guess you could say. So they looked up to me and they thought I was cool, and I felt
they fulfilled a need in you.
Yes.
If you think about it, though, because you mentioned, you got very adept at being manipulative. To be around your church friends or the friends that were more acceptable, it had to be exhausting because you were not able to get honest. You're always with a shield up. I'm doing the right thing. I'm saying the right thing. I'm going to the right places. I'm in church. I'm doing all of that. But then when I'm around these people that I know are not really accepted with the crowd that I'm supposed to be around, as you were saying, it's not so exhausting because you could drop some of your walls. But I would honestly tell you that you were living alive with both of them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it all came to a head. I got pregnant at 17.
Let me just before you. So was the church attendance and such at this point voluntary, or was this mandated by your family?
I loved it. That was the thing. I loved it. It was crazy because I loved being there. In my mind, I thought that I had this great relationship with the Lord. Like I'm, doing all the right things in the eyes of the Lord is what I was telling myself. Because I'm here and I want to be here. I enjoyed it. They weren't making me. Like, we knew we had to go, but I chose, I loved it. I truly loved it, but I also liked feeling more accepted over here, But when I got pregnant at 17 with my oldest daughter, that was like such a blow because my parents didn't know the extent of what I was doing. They had known, both of them had found out that I was sexually active and tried to, in separate conversations, oh, don't do that, trying to talk me out of being, doing those things. And then I ended up pregnant, and that was a blow because then the church friends aren't your friends anymore.
Nope.
The parents start talking about you. They don't want your kids around,
because they can catch it.
Because they can catch it. My mom, I'll never forget, was at a football game, and heard people talking about me sitting a few bleachers down, and she was devastated. She's like, that's my daughter. And, my mom said, your kids are probably doing the same things. They just haven't got caught, gotten pregnant, but my mom and dad really went through a rough time because, my mom just couldn't accept it for a little while and would try to. And let me preface this with, she's amazing. She did all that she knew, and she was reacting from a place of hurt.
Right.
But she wanted me to hide it for a while. Like, would just, why are you wearing that? That sort of thing, just almost embarrassed of me, I felt. And until we went and had the ultrasound and I found out what I was having, it made it really real to her. And then a shift changed. She became super happy, very loving to me. Our relationship got so much better, and we really became like best friends. And she was amazing through all of that and started defending me to people instead of me feeling like I'm an embarrassment.
And I'm an island by myself,
and
no one's going to talk to me.
Proud of me. And I was with my oldest daughter. Her dad and I were like high school sweethearts. We ended up getting married, when she was a year and a half old. But that's when, like, the alcoholism, I really started drinking heavily because we were young teenagers that we were the only ones that had our own place. Everybody else still lived at home with mom and dad. So we're the cool kids. Let's go hang out over there. And we can get drunk and we can party. So it became an all the time thing.
And your daughter was a year and a half old at that point?
When we got married, yes, and moved in together, because before that I lived at home, with her. So the partying really amped up. I was still going to college. He was going to college. We were working, taking care of her. But when we were home, everybody was there. So it wasn't a life for her. It was a party house. And then our marriage became volatile. We shouldn't have gotten married. We were doing it for the wrong reasons because parents were pushing it. Y'all got to get married. You've got to get married. So we ended up getting divorced. Like, I think it might have been maybe 2.5 years after we got married, we ended up getting divorced. I went home with the baby. Me and Lexi went home to my parents and stayed there for a while. And
so you would have only been about, 24?
No, I was only 20. I was 20 when we separated.
Okay.
My 21st birthday, our divorce was final.
Oh, gosh.
But so I went back home with my parents, and I was okay. The drink, I stopped doing all the drinking because I'm home taking care of this baby full time. My parents allowed us to be there, but this is your child. You're going to take care of her. And so all of the drinking and everything stopped. I really poured into, now I have to get 2 jobs. I have to really do everything that I can to take care of this child on my own. And then the courts tell me, hey, you have to start letting her go to his house every other weekend if you want child support, and that devastated me because in my mind, this little baby's my best friend. This is mine, and mom and them are like, hey, he's wanting to be, you're going to let her be in his life. Like because he has a wonderful, his family is so amazing. They have always supported me even after till his mom passed away. I was her everything. Like the other daughter-in-law she had, I was the one,
Yeah.
So you weren't worried about him being a bad father?
No,
but you were just
never.
Friend.
She had become, I had made her take on the role of like my best friend, this little baby, my everything. And so when I had to let her start going to his house every other weekend, I'm like, well, I can't just sit here. I just felt myself sinking into
I got to do something.
That place. So, and all of our friends, all of my friends were his friends. So I'm like, I can't keep going and hanging out with the same people because those are his friends. They had all, it was very awkward. Some were on my side, some were on his. It was just very, toxic friendships because it was a lot of backbiting and talk, and
so this was not a cordial separation or divorce. This was an ugly kind of.
It was not good. Not good. And I was working at the mall at the time at a jewelry store, and I ended up meeting like a group of people because I pierced ears for a living. And so these people came in to get their ears pierced, and they were like, would see me all the time and invited me to come hang out. And I was like, well, the weekend that I had to let her go, I said, okay, I'm going to take them up on it and meet some new people and try to meet new friends. And these friends were were using drugs. This is when drugs was introduced to me for the first time. They were, using ecstasy, pain pills, things like that. And I did not for a little while because I'm like, this is so out of my element. I got to go.
Yeah.
I'm thinking my daughter. I'm just going to hang out. I drank on the weekends with them, and then I would go back home to my daughter. But then, these were the people that, again, I started hanging out with because they were the only people I had outside of the friends he and I had. So I kept hanging out with them. And then, eventually it gets you. I ended up trying like pain pills for the first time. And I'm like, man, this makes me feel pretty good. And then it went to everybody was going to roll one night, as they call it, and wanted me to try ecstasy. And I had been watching how they were feeling when I was just drinking, to get through it. And I'm like, that looks, I want to feel like they feel,
Yeah.
And so
I just
wanted to try it. Like never in a million years thinking that it would turn my life into what it did. I just wanted to fit in. Again, it was that fit in mindset. I want it because they're like, why don't you try, and would push. And I'm like, okay. And I did and loved it. And then I began seeking it. Like, let's do this. I'd be the one, hey, every other weekend when Lexi would be at her dad's, I'm with them and we're doing it, doing ecstasy, doing pain pills. And then before I knew it, I'm selling ecstasy in the clubs. I mean, it spiraled so quickly. Like I'm doing it, then we're selling it. And then it became way worse because then even when it wasn't every other weekend, I have a house. A lot of them lived with parents or had other living situations, but I had a place at this point. Lexi and I did. Y'all come over here. So then it's party at my house, but I'm still being a good mom because y'all can't come over until I put her to bed. She can't know anyone's here. I have to be a good mom and do the mom thing, but then y'all can all come over. So then everybody's coming to my apartment.
How old was she at this time?
She was like 3.5, 4. So she's oblivious to everything for a long time. I did real good. You'll find in my story, I'm real good at manipulating. I'm real good at hiding things and playing the part. I would have all these people come over, and I worked on Saturdays, so I would stay up all night, and my dad would drive. I lived in Saraland in an apartment. My dad would drive to pick her up and take her to their house to keep her for me to work. And one morning, I guess I had eventually passed out, and he came to get her, and he's beating on the door, and nobody's coming to the door. And I finally get up and open the door, and so oblivious to the fact that I'm stepping over people. And I open the door, and there's my dad. Didn't even register what time it was, who it could be. And it was my dad. And he didn't say a word. That's how I knew how angry he was. He just walked in and he got her and he left. And he was like, you need to get to work. I don't even remember everything he said, but I know he was very few words that day. And that's how I knew he was angry. But my dad loved me, man. So we didn't talk a lot about it. Like he didn't want to hurt my my whole life, he always tiptoed around how to approach me when he had every right to just, come at me. He wouldn't. He was always so protective of my feelings and my heart. So he didn't say a whole lot. And I met
just a quick note on that, because every now and then things are brought up that I think are important for people to hear and to know. Because I love your wording there. You said he was so protective of my heart, which is the perception of the protective parent, but what they're really protecting is the addiction, right? And that's the danger of codependency, right? Is that there's such a love for this person. There's a selfish component to it too, which we don't need to get into, but just as clarification, unfortunately, the reality is that they're not protecting your heart. They're really protecting this downward spiral into your addiction because they're not challenging it, right? Not that they could fix it. It's not their job to, but they're certainly not putting any kind of consequence along this path. So you're just on that fast track downward, right? Is that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also at this particular point, addiction was not a word used. Like I didn't think there was an issue because I'm just having fun. We're just going to the clubs. I'm putting my child to bed. I'm taking care of her. They're coming to my house. She's not seeing them. I was justifying every single thing that I did and rationalizing and making every excuse to make myself feel better and not accept it was what it was. And I also was still getting up and going to work, getting, her to daycare, all the things that I was supposed to do, I was doing. I was functioning. And I think sometimes that's even worse when you're a functioning addict because you can get real far into it.
Very definitely. I'd like to take a moment to recognize a major podcast sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by America's Thrift Stores, your go-to option for decluttering and giving back. If you have a closet bursting at the seams or a garage that's seen better days, we've got the perfect solution for you.
That's right. America's Thrift Stores makes it easy to clear out the clutter and make a positive impact in your community. Whether you're cleaning out your wardrobe, downsizing your living space, or just looking to give back, America's Thrift Stores has you covered.
And here's the best part. You've got options. Schedule a hassle-free home pickup, drop off your items at one of their convenient donation sites, or swing by an America's Thrift Store to donate in person. No matter which way you choose, you're making a difference.
Absolutely. Every donation you make to America's Thrift Stores directly benefits charities in your area, such as the Home of Grace and other fantastic organizations dedicated to helping those in need.
For example, donations made to America's Thrift Stores in southern Mississippi help the Home of Grace provide support and assistance to individuals facing drug and alcohol addiction. Your contributions make a real impact on their mission to provide freedom from addiction through Christ-centered recovery. So not only are you decluttering your life, but you're also helping build a stronger and more supportive community.
It's truly a double blessing. So what are you waiting for? Clean out that closet, clear out that garage, and make a positive difference in your community by donating to America's Thrift Stores.
Visit America's Thrift Stores online to schedule a home pickup, locate a donation site near you, or get directions to one of their store locations.
America's Thrift Stores, where giving back never goes out of style.
I had begun dating again a guy that had never done drugs either, and we started trying it together. He was in the group of friends that I had become a part of, but he was like the only one that didn't do anything, and so he and I both started doing things together with that group of friends at the same time, and we started dating, and we were doing so many drugs, just cocaine, the pills, and one day he was like, this is stupid. Like, I really like you. I love your daughter, because I had finally started. I didn't let him meet my daughter for a long time, for like it was a good almost year before he even laid eyes on her, because I was trying to be protective of her and be the good mom. And he was like, I really, like your daughter. And I said I'd never date anybody that had kids, but I really like her and I really love you. Like, this is stupid. We're throwing all this money away. This is dumb. We don't need to do this. You've got her. And he could just put it down. And that is the pivotal moment that I knew I was addicted, because I couldn't stop. And the person that I began doing all these things with could just
put it down.
But I couldn't.
Yeah.
That is when life really got crazy, because then you have to live a double life.
Well, then I would think you also lose even that bit of false hope that you had. Like, coming to that awareness, wait a minute, something's...
Yeah.
Even with all these people and now hanging out with him, I'm not like them.
Exactly.
But that double life had really already been seeded, right? You talk about the church friends and the night. Yeah, so it's interesting.
Looking back, I can say all that, but in that moment when it was all happening when I was younger, it didn't. It was just like, okay, church friend, school friend, But as I've become an adult and things have happened in my life, I'm like, man, I've lived it up. This is
most of my life.
But I never thought, the real heavy double life and accepted it for what it was until this particular moment that I'm going to talk about. But it was a pattern for me.
It was a pattern, but you had not really had any consequences.
No, and I still didn't for a long time. So then when he said, okay, we're going to quit, I was like, I can't stop. So then I'm doing things during the week at work. I'm snorting cocaine in the bathroom at work, because once I get off, I'll be around him, so I can't do it around him. So then now I'm doing it at work and popping all the pills, and I can't stop doing the pills. No one had ever spoke to me either about withdrawals. I didn't know that was a thing. I just knew that when I wasn't taking, I was like, I'm feeling bad. Like, why is my body hurting today? Man, I didn't know why. So I took more pills. So I'm doing all these things, during the day, on the job. And then somebody, he started kind of questioning me a little bit. He's like, what are you doing? Because the cocaine, crazy as this sounds, you do so much cocaine, your nose is pouring snot, it's red. trivial sounding stuff, but someone said, hey, well then why do that and get caught up? Why don't you just smoke it? Then became the crack addiction. I stopped snorting cocaine and thought, let me smoke it because then he won't know that I'm smoking it.
Then my nose
is cleared up, so I began to smoke crack. So then now I'm smoking crack. And I worked at a dentist office in the dental lab, and I started smoking crack every day in the dental lab. And he and I did not live together at this point. I had my apartment with my daughter. He lived somewhere else. So on the nights, like after he'd leave, I would smoke crack in my apartment after I put my daughter to bed because I'm a good mom. You know, that's what I would tell myself. But that...
Yeah.
Another kind of a little pin the tail on the donkey here, almost educationally, but it's so interesting because would you say at this point, sounds like you're using now as isolative, right? You're using the bathroom at work. You're using when people are gone. So you've gone from this kind of social aspect of using to now it's you feel off when you're not using. And that's such a distinctive trait of late addiction, right? Is that I often hear addicts say, well, toward the end, I was just simply using to feel normal again. It's no longer, I'm not getting high. I got to do this to get through the day, right? Is that kind of where we're at in your travels here at this point, or? With
the pain pills for sure. And maybe the crack, I just couldn't stop. I just loved it. You know, I couldn't stop, but the pills for sure. And it became isolation because remember, those friends were his friends before they were mine. I met these people and him at the same time. So he quit. So now if Keith's quit, Kristy's quit. So I had no friends that I could be like that around. So that's when I started pulling back and making excuses why I didn't feel like kind of going and doing stuff. Or if we did, I would have the pills couldn't smoke crack, you know, because somebody, he might not notice, but somebody else is going to pick up on something because they were still actively in addiction, you know? So I finally ended up, my parents moved that year, and then the addiction really spiraled because my parents who helped me with my daughter, who were there, they were my everything. My dad's job again took them to move to Houston, Texas, real far away. And when they left me, I thought, my world fell apart. My daddy's gone, you know, and so the addiction spiraled even more, and I ended up losing that job from smoking crack at work and failing at my job, not doing, but still that manipulation. I'd put my scrubs on and I'd go out that door and I'd pretend like I was at work for him, so he would think that I'm at work, but I'm in a crack house all day. My daughter was at school. At this point, she was, you know, in school. So now I'm in crack houses all day, pretending to be at work so that nobody knows, you know, and then when...
Spending money that you're now not making. Spending money
that I'm not making, but I can call my daddy. I called my dad, and whatever I needed, whatever excuse I gave, he was there. So then to the person that I'm with, he doesn't know I'm calling dad and get money. He thinks I'm getting paid because I'm working you see what I'm saying? So it was like... Him over here, dad over here, and then finally, and also I was still selling drugs here and there. And one day, I remember sitting in my room and screaming. And my daughter was in the bed, and I was smoking. And I said, "Lord, I had become tired at that point of the crack addiction. I'm like, take me out or deliver me from this. I can't do this anymore." And the very next day, I had picked my daughter up from school, and we were headed home. And I took my seatbelt off probably a mile from the house, pulled the seatbelt off, and blue lights hit me. And we pulled into, I will never forget, like 6 of them swarmed in you thought I robbed the Walgreens on Knollwood. I had a warrant for a bad check, and I had, mind you, my daughter's in the vehicle with me, and it was so bad, I would tell her at stoplights, put your head down for a minute, put your head down, and I would smoke. Crazy. You know, put your head down. So she never saw me, so I'm a good mom. You know, that's still what I was telling myself. I was so done when they pulled me over. I had drugs in my lap. I had pills that I was supposed to be delivering to someone in my lap, like drugs galore in my lap. Child over here. Glove box full of stuff, and never even attempted to try to rustle around and hide it. I was just so out of my mind at that point.
Almost welcoming being caught.
You know, And it was a God thing in that moment, because I know in that moment that was my answer to prayer, was this happening, because my daughter's grandfather happened to be coming home at that moment and saw us and thought we had had a wreck, and he pulled over and was able to remove her because they were about to take her to St. Mary's, child services. So he takes her, and I remember saying, I got this handled, didn't tell him what was happening. I was like, I just need to talk to him for a minute. I'm going to come get her, in just a little bit. And I didn't. I ended up getting arrested for drugs. I was facing 22 felonies because I didn't know that they can count every single pill as a felony. So I was facing a lot of felonies. Ended up going to Metro Jail. And when I got to Metro Jail, that is where I found out that I was pregnant with my son, my second child, in Metro Jail. And I had a miscarriage before that, and didn't realize I had gotten pregnant again. And I had. And so I'm in Metro. My drug screen lit up like a Christmas tree. They're telling me that I'm pregnant, and it's a whole lot of emotion.
Yeah, I bet.
I did not even, I was so embarrassed and so devastated, because I'm like, now, even I knew my parents had thoughts and knew something wasn't right, because when they would come in town and visit, I'd say, I need to run to the store to get birthday candles if we were having a birthday party, and I'd be gone 6 hours, So they knew something was wrong, did not know to the extent, didn't know what, but knew I was using drugs, clearly.
Well, and they had some experience with you now.
Did anyone ever point blank ask you?
No, because I think no one wanted to hear the answer that they already knew.
Well, once we hear the answer, then we're also obligated to act. And they don't always know what to do. Yeah.
So I didn't want to call them. I didn't want to talk to anybody. My mindset was, I'm going to just lay down in there, and somebody might find me, they might not. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I'm not calling anyone. I just was going to waste away in there and hope something got figured out. And that was
in the jail.
Yeah. Crazy thinking. I was like, I'm not calling my daddy. I'm not doing it.
You knew that they would find out, right?
Oh, yeah. And let me just tell you, that was on a Thursday. I had a bond hearing the next morning. They shuffle you out to the bond hearing. And when I walked in that bond hearing, they're in Houston, mind you. A deacon from our church was sitting in the courtroom, and I knew my dad had found out somehow and did everything he could do to get that man here. So somebody was there, because he couldn't be there. I know, it's like, wow. And so then an attorney, so I go back up and I see the deacon, Mr. Craig. He's since gone to be with the Lord, but he was sitting out there, and they take me back, and they called me out for an attorney visit like that Monday. So I sat the whole weekend knowing Mr. Craig was out there. So I know my parents know, but I'm still not calling them because I'm terrified of what they're going to say. So an attorney came to visit me that they had made contact with and said, you have a bond, but your parents are not going to get you out until you agree to go to treatment. And it's not going to be, you're not going to do some 28-day, they want you to go for some serious intensive treatment. And in that moment, you're going to say whatever you have to say to get out of there. So at that point,
absolutely, I'll go to treatment.
They're not going to bond you out until you call them. I was like, okay. So I'm telling myself I'm going to say whatever I have to say so they get me out of here, and then I'm going to run, because I'm real good at just running. I will get out of any situation I don't want to be in. So, and it's crazy to me how much my mom knew that at this point, and I had no idea. Because when I called my dad, I was like, I lost it. And the first thing, and I will never forget it, was never anger. He said, baby, how are you doing? Are you okay in there? And I was like, because most parents, it would have been anger and what are you doing? But it was them again. Yeah. Worried about saying the wrong thing to me, it was like walking on, we don't want to upset her. We want to love her, and just always wanting to make sure I'm okay instead of coming down on me. And I'm like, get me out of here. And he's like, you have to agree to go get some help. And he said, they said, we found a place for you. That deacon that came for my bond hearing, my parents didn't have the money at the time, because my dad, they had just moved to Houston. He just started a new job. That deacon and his wife found the place and said, here's the check, we're going to pay for it so she can get the help, because these people had known me since I was 12 years old, you know, and were devastated. So
I meant to ask you, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but you said that at some point you kind of cried out and said, all right, you got to either take me or deliver me. During the worst of the years of this, was faith still a conscious connection for you, or had you kind of,
It was, and that is what was so just because I would
that real
still
double.
read this is so terrible, y'all. Some of the things you're going to hear. I would be smoking crack, reading my Joyce Meyer's devotions. I was trying so hard in my sick thinking to do the right thing. And I would still pray. I would say prayers with my daughter. I would, I had her in church. I'm taking her in church because she's going to be trained up, in church.
I think, though, you're definitely not the only one that has done those things. But how is it also not like even in the pit when you're at the bottom and you're still reaching out to read your word instead of leaving it shut, when you're still playing praise and worship music? How is that not speaking life into you when you can't do it yourself?
Yeah. And I know looking back that was, God, I see so many moments that the Lord was still there, know. But
for sure,
when Dad said, we have a lady that's coming to interview you to see if you're a candidate for the rehab, like Brother Craig had already written the check because they had gotten the information, because he said the Lord told him there was a spot for me before the lady even interviewed me. But because of the fact that, and they had learned I was pregnant as well by then, I did not tell them. I can't remember that tidbit on how they found out. I'm not really sure, but they found out. And so the lady she had never had a pregnant client before and wanted to come and talk to me and all of that. So she came to talk to me, and then the attorney came back later and said, she's going to take you. And my parents headed down. They came down. That was Tuesday. They got there Tuesday to get me. And I'm thinking, I'm about to get out of here. And I was not, in my mind, I was like, I'm just going to get out of here. And once I get to my apartment, like, I'm not going somewhere that far. This is what I told myself, away from my daughter for that long. I'm not doing it. I am not doing it, because rehab was not a thing back then. That was when I was 26. I never had a friend that was messed up like that went, that was not a thing. This was like not something you even heard about. Rehab was never a term in my vocabulary or anybody I knew.
But you also just said something that we hear all the time. I've worked intakes, Paul, very much so on admissions, but I can't do 90 days in treatment. I can't leave my children that long.
Yes, that's what I was
like. We weren't there.
No, even though I was there, I wasn't there, because I would leave this baby literally and tell her at 8 years old that I'm going to McDonald's to get us some dinner, and I would hit the crack house and wouldn't come home. And cell phones weren't a thing back then either for little kids. You know what I mean? You had pagers and stuff. So she's in this apartment by herself, terrified, And Mommy came back and never had the chicken nuggets.
No. Well, there wasn't any money for McDonald's at that point. Before we go any further, let's take a minute to address the man or the woman listening to today's episode and wishing for a better life. Or maybe addiction has completely overtaken a family member or a friend.
You are not alone. As you may know, the Jesus Loves Addicts podcast is produced by the Home of Grace, a Christ-centered addiction recovery program in South Mississippi with over 60 years of experience.
The Home of Grace has residential programs ranging from 30 days to 12 months. With 2 separate campuses for men and women, they are fully staffed with caring individuals who want nothing more than to guide you to a life of recovery.
Services include individual and group counseling, marriage and family counseling, classes, workshops, GED, and workforce training, all grounded in biblical principles.
And because of donations from the community, the cost of the program is incredibly affordable.
Thousands of alumni from across the country can tell you there is no other program in the world quite like the Home of Grace.
If you want to start a new path to recovery, don't wait. Speak with an admission specialist today. Visit homeofgrace.org or call 833-55-GRACE to talk with someone.
That's 833-55-GRACE. Call the Home of Grace today. Well, so, you talk about how you kind of kept it from her, and what a powerful image when you talk about even being in the car, like, hey, just sit down for a minute. And then, so she may not have known that you were hitting a crack pipe, but looking back, do you kind of see that she knew something was going wrong? I mean,
I'm glad you just said that, because this brings me to my next point. Whenever I got out of jail, she was 8 years old, okay? And while I'm in jail, her dad and his parents have her, and I get out of jail. My parents went to see her, too, to try to talk to her and explain what was going on, because she just wanted to know where her mama was. She left me, and I was supposed to come get her. They had to tell her kind of that mommy needed to go away for a little bit to be a better mommy, and she became angry with them and said, my mommy's a great mommy, and was angry. And when they got me out of jail that day, they didn't take me. This is how I knew my mom knew. She was way smarter than I ever gave her credit for, because we didn't go back to my apartment that's in Mobile. We got a hotel room with 2 beds. Dad slept in this bed. Mom and Kristy slept in this bed. Mom's legs wrapped around me. If I got up to use the bathroom, Mom joined me.
That's
when
great.
I took a shower that night to get the jail stench off, Mom sat on the toilet.
I love that.
Never would let me out of her sight. And I'm like, Mom. She's like, nope. And then at that point, I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to rehab. We went to Walmart to get some things for me to go. And I remember not having eaten for so long. I remember Twinkies were my thing. I ate 9 Twinkies from Walmart on the way to the rehab. And my mom just could not get over that. She was like, oh, God. She realized how bad it was because I was just eating so much. And so they dropped me off at treatment. And Mom's like, you've got to do this, you know? And so I said, okay, I'm gonna do it. But I was devastated and didn't love it. But I was like, I'm going to do it. And she's like, you're pregnant. Let's not forget about that. So once I got into the treatment facility, they took me to a doctor's appointment. And what Mom had, even though the lady that owned the rehab was going to take me, Mom had one of the sweet little ladies from the church to make sure she came too, because she knew I could get over on the lady from rehab, and she was afraid I wasn't going to go back. And so, but sweet little Miss Karen, she knew that I couldn't get away from her. So we went, and I found out that day. Now, mind you, I had just found out a week ago, because I was in jail for a week, that I was pregnant. I found out that, hey, you're really far along. I don't know how far along you thought you were, but I was 5.5 months pregnant at that point, almost 6 months.
Wow.
Okay.
I was so small because I had been smoking all this crack heavily. You couldn't tell. I hadn't, and, I wasn't paying attention to other things that you should be looking for, because I was just so out of my mind. So they said, we're going to schedule you an ultrasound the next week. And I found out I was having my son. And then I got to kick it into high gear. I got to do this, because now I'm going to have another baby. And dear God, I hope nothing's wrong with him. That's where my mindset went, was I thought, even though there could have already been something wrong at that point, I'm like, if I work hard enough and I do the best I can to get through this treatment, do the right things, he's going to be okay. You know, that's what I told myself. And And so his dad, now mind you, now the jig's up, because I'm in jail for crack, and he finds out I'm pregnant with his child. Oh, and you've been smoking crack all this time, and he got really angry, and I would write him letters from rehab, and he wouldn't read them. He wouldn't respond back. But I got passes, and my parents are so great. They lived in Houston, and I got overnight passes every weekend, and they drove every weekend for 90 days from Houston, Texas, every weekend, to make sure I was not left there and the only girl that couldn't go on a pass.
Oh, wow.
And they would get me, and I would see the guy that I was with, Keith. I would see him, like, he would meet us on pass, sometimes, not every time, but he was angry, and with good reason. He was very angry, but he would still see me. And then
was he completely shocked by this, or did he also kind of know that?
At the time, he acted like, I think this go around, because there's a lot of it. This time, this particular stint with my, getting caught up and it coming out, he was shocked. Okay. He was shocked at this point, because I was doing a really good job at this point. So yeah, he was pretty shocked, because the day I got arrested, we were supposed to have dinner that night, and me and Lexi didn't show up. So he's sitting at a restaurant where she, just angry.
You're in Mobile Metro.
Yeah. So So he was pretty shocked at that point, but I'm in treatment. So, and then we're pregnant. We're having a son. So he was trying to just put his emotions aside and figure out what is he going to do. He's going to be a dad for the first time. But she's pregnant with my kid in rehab. He's upset because they would not let him go to the doctor's appointments because we were not married. So I took that pregnancy away from him is what he felt like. This is his first child that he can't be a part of any. He didn't even get to be there for the ultrasound. That was one of the stipulations because he and I were not married. He could not take me, and he could, so he felt like I robbed him of that, and essentially I did because of my choices and my behaviors. So I graduated rehab April 25th of 2006. My son was born May 17th. Perfect. There was not a thing wrong with him. So God just showed up and showed out. Amen. Not a single thing wrong with him. He was totally perfect. And I was bound and determined I was going to do the right thing because I was a new mom again. Now I have 2 kids. And I was going to meetings every day. And I also knew I had a looming court case coming up in October of that year. So I'm like doing everything I'm supposed to do, everything the attorney said, taking care of my kids. He was the little NA baby because I had his little car seat.
You just said you were going to meetings every day. Is that what we're talking? NA?
Yes, I was doing that at the time because the rehab that I went to was not a faith-based.
Okay.
So they did take us to church, but it was all NA, AA, CA, all of that.
It's interesting that they weren't a faith-based, but they put the stipulation that you had to be married for him.
Because the lady was a real church-going lady, but her
so it was a personal.
Yeah, but her program
was secular.
So I'm doing all the right things. Well, the court date comes, and the preacher of the little church that the lady in the rehab, that owned the rehab was taking us to, he showed up for me. People from my old church that I had always gone to showed up. The lady who owned the rehab I was in was also a bigwig in drug court. She was like one of the founding members of drug court in Mobile. So that looked real good. She knew the judge really well. And God showed up then because I had never been in trouble before, but I was facing 22 felonies. But I walked out of there not even on paper. He now processed everything and said, if I ever see you back in here, because he knew, he could see the family that I came from, the people that were standing up for me, that I wasn't like a lot of people that he sees, and he felt like giving me a chance, and that was the Lord. And I did really good after that. But then in the back of my mind, it was like, I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm a new mom, like this baby all night long. I'm just going to take a couple of pain pills. I had been clean now for a while. I'm just going to take a couple. So
about how long had you been clean at that time?
I say a while. It wasn't a great, I graduated. Okay. He was born May of 2006. So it was like about a year and a half because it was the end of 2007.
Okay.
When I was like, oh, it's just so hard with 2 kids and I just want a little bit of energy. And it spiraled very quickly. The pain pills would get me every time. I spiraled very quickly. And at this point, Keith and I are living together. Like, we have both the kids. We have an apartment. We're living together. Lexi's dad's still in her life. He's always been very active in her life. She would go over there every other weekend, but we still had that one kid that's there all the time. But he's still doing all the right things. And so I can't let him know that I'm taking these pills. Well, then, you take a few, then you take a few more, then you're addicted again. Like you're having the withdrawal, so then you have to take more. And then I always had that one person that would have a bright idea to give me that would just keep him from knowing, and you don't have to run around looking for pills all the time. Why don't you go get on the methadone clinic?
Okay.
Why don't you do that? And then you're not using drugs anymore, so then you'll be clean again, is what they told me. I was like, that sounds like a great idea. So I went to the methadone clinic.
Did you tell anyone you were going to the methadone clinic?
And again, let me tell you what a terrible person I was. I was such a good liar, such a good manipulator. I was on the methadone clinic for 4 years. And to this day, Keith never knew about it.
Until now.
Maybe you won't see it, but hey, it's okay. It's okay because I'm being honest. But I lied and manipulated every excuse I could come up with to why I had to go. Because for a while, you got to go every morning, bright and early. I was going to clean houses. I always had a house to go clean. So I would, but I'd take little Keith, like the baby, with me.
How are you paying for the methadone clinic every day? Cleaning houses?
No, that's what I was telling him. But
that's why I'm asking.
I was a stay-at-home mom, with the kids. So I would just, my sweet daddy, and I hate to do this because I know he's going to feel terrible about so much. But, I would call Dad and be like, he's not giving me any money. And just the lies, blamed Keith for everything. He's not giving me any money. He's, blah, blah, blah.
That's
just whatever
exactly what
excuse
we
that
do.
I could do. And my dad would get angry at him.
And send you the money.
Whatever I needed, here you go. And it was like, okay, and that went on for
a long time.
years and years and years.
Meanwhile, whatever money's coming your way from Dad, Keith thinks is from the cleaning of the houses.
There you go.
So
yes. So it's, again, juggling both sides, and it's working because I got him thinking this. And so...
and on the methadone, you run out withdrawing all the time.
No.
And so you feel like
thinking,
you can do everything.
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question, because you said something a minute ago. You said, there's always somebody in my life who's offering.
Yep.
So is it fair to say that after each of these rehabs, you were still keeping one foot in bad company? Like, did you have people? Okay, so you never fully broke away.
No, because I was the one that had it all when I was hanging out with the other people that had a rougher life and were doing what. It made me almost, it sounds terrible, but I felt better about myself because I'm like, I'm not as bad as them, but I can also be like, I'm cool around them because I'm the one that has the car. I'm the one that has this. And so they really like me. So it was that.
So even in these moments of sobriety, your life, you were in the old packaging.
Still would
straddling the fence.
Yes, straddling the fence.
Yeah.
So I went through this methadone clinic and I knew I didn't want to be on it anymore. And then Keith decides he wanted to start talking about wanting to get married and we should have another baby because you have a daughter. And he loved my oldest like she was his and has been in her life since she was 3.5. Loved her. But biologically, my son was the only one that we had and he wanted to try for a girl. And I was like, oh no, I panicked because
you're on methadone.
I'm on methadone. So I was like, I put that off as long as I could. But I'm like, now's the time I got to get off this. So I backed off a few milligrams, and it took me almost a year, but I finally got off of it and walked away from it. And when I tell you...
And that wasn't an easy process.
No, it was not.
I don't feel like enough people, they're told, even by doctors today, and we know that we've talked about it, with Subutex, Suboxone, methadone, try this, it's going to help you. And as far as harm reduction goes, absolutely, it is less than, you're not shooting heroin. But the withdrawal is brutal, and it's not a fast process.
It is not. When I tell you methadone, if I knew then what I know now, I would have never, I could have kicked those lower tabs knowing now what I know. The methadone, I had gotten up to 280 milligrams a day is what I was dosing.
Gracious.
I backed down to as far as you could go. It was like 5 milligrams, and then you just walk away. I withdrew so bad. And again, now I'm having withdrawal. So now I have to pretend like I'm having the flu. So I had a deathly case of the flu and he thought I was dying and was wanting me to go to the ER, but I didn't want to go. I'll be okay, and that was how I played that one.
How long did that last?
What a heavy weight.
Let me tell you, I felt like I had the flu. Literally, couldn't pull myself off the floor for almost 3 weeks, but it was 2 months before I could walk around for very long without feeling like I was going to collapse.
That's what I hear.
Almost 2 months. But it was a good 3 weeks, almost a month of debilitating, like throwing up, upset stomach. Your hair hurts like flu. Like he thought I was dying from the flu.
So indicative of how entrenched you were in maintaining this facade to your husband. Because most people, when they get to that point, if you're throwing up and you're sick, you just come clean.
Yeah.
This is what I've been doing. Leave me alone. I'm getting better.
No.
But man, you are hanging on to this.
I was hanging on.
That's her hill. She's going down and she's got the flu.
Yes. And he literally, at that point, believed me because mind you, I was on the methadone. So I was living this and I was working by then. I literally was cleaning houses at that point, working for a cleaning company at this point. But so I got off the methadone. That was 2012. We ended up getting married and had my baby girl in 2013. Stayed clean till the very beginning of 2015.
Okay.
So you did end up having that baby.
Yes, I had Bradley. Okay. We had her great. We're in church.
So he got his
kids
girl.
In church. Okay. Got his girl, all things. Everything's great. We're in church. I'm singing on the praise team at church. We're, as an adult, he's taken it we're all going as a family. Life is great. Life is great. We even went on a cruise the next year. He and I went on a marriage cruise with our church. Life was amazing. We were doing really well, had our little family. And then the stupid pain pills every time. I was like, well, I know now what not to do, so that I don't end up on the methadone.
I can use these successfully.
Because a guy at the church, a deacon in the church we were going to, him and his wife were on the pills, and he was telling me, like, I ended up thinking, I think I walked up on them or something, exchanging some pills from one another, before we went into church, and I was like, ugh. And so I was like, hey, and brought it up and started taking a little Lortab here and there, then a Percocet, and then it just spiraled real quickly again.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. So you're hanging on to this faith side, and listen, that's real, right? I mean, this is the battle of the flesh and the spirit constantly. So it's real. But you keep addressing it as in, I'm telling myself I'm doing well because of that. But I can't imagine that there's not another side of you just beating yourself up. I mean, you must have just been.
There were so many altar call moments where I am in the floor, ugly crying, like, okay, it's going to be different. Like conviction was like, so I became. At the time, I didn't know. I would always tell you I was never a depressed person because I would get up and smile, and I'm always the one that had a smile. But internally, looking back and knowing what I know now, I was dying inside. Yeah. Like I was trying so hard I wanted so bad to be the one that got it and be the great mom. And my kids could have told you, like they literally, my younger, because my older one at this point, she and I were not doing so well because of relapse after relapse, because she's the one who walked through all of it from the beginning with me. And so she had actually, at this point, we had ended up, no, not yet at this point. So I started doing pain pills again in the end of 2014, the beginning of 15. It spiraled very quickly. The money thing, I'm blaming Keith and talking bad about, and he was a wonderful husband, but I'm bashing him to my dad so that I can get the money.
Well, you'd learn that works, and you've got to do that.
So I'm cleaning houses, and I'm making money, but my addiction has spiraled again so heavily with the pain pills that I am spending ungodly amounts of money every day that I need money from my dad. I need money from this job. He's wanting to know why I'm asking him for money. I'm like, well, I would lie and say, well, I didn't get to clean as many houses, or it would be some excuse why I didn't have that much money, And so Keith's giving me money. I'm manipulating him for money at this point. And so then again, this person that I had known for years and years and years was like, you're spending so much money, gave me another bright idea. You're spending so much money on all these Lortabs and Percocets. Why don't you try Roxy's? You'll spend $30, but like it's going to last way more, and you can snort it. You know what I mean? And it'll last way longer. So that might be, you might only spend $60 in a day instead of hundreds. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's going to work better for me because I'm not going to have to scrounge around and figure out what to do to manipulate to get all this money. So I started doing that. And then eventually, like with everything else, it's not enough, so I'm having to buy more. And then the same said person that was supposed to be a very good friend of mine was like, well, I could tell you a better way. This was in 2015, in August. I will never forget it, 2015. Why don't you shoot it? And I was like, shoot what? I was so dumb, had never been around needles, hated needles, wasn't the needle person, had never seen what a needle from a person that shoots drugs looks like that was not something that was terrifying to me. And then it was that point that she said, that's how I've been doing it, for a while. I just didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to be mad at me. But I'm telling you, it'll work so much better because, again, the nose situation, because I was starting to have sinus problem and all that again. And, so she was like, and it'll last way longer. You won't have to do as much. You can break. It was explaining the details of how you can make one pill last longer. So now you're not going to have to keep buying this many Roxy's. You can make a couple last. So it was like a money saver thing to me, and a hiding that I'm having to hide all of this. Now I won't have to ask for as much money again.
It was going to protect the addiction, like you mentioned earlier.
So I was
if ever there was, as you're saying this slogan, anybody who's ever been in treatment and many who haven't know this definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting. I mean, this is amazing.
Case for insanity here, because so I was like, well, I don't know how to do it. Let me see you do it. And she showed me how she did it for herself.
Also, with all that you were doing, you're still somewhat naive, is what I keep hearing. Like, this was new, this was clueless.
Yeah.
Like, you found something, you stuck. Is that making sense? You know what I mean? It's like, now I need to try this. Okay, cool. What is that? You didn't have any awareness of it, so you didn't know to be afraid of it.
Well, I'm wondering, though, and maybe that's the absolute truth, but I'm wondering, as she says that, were you really that naive, or is that part of the facade, too?
No,
was there kind of a gamemanship going on?
And here's the thing. I really, in all honesty, can tell you I was that naive because it was always like, I still was doing the church thing and being the best mom that I could be. And when I would hang out with people, you know, with my husband and my kids, we're doing the stuff with the church friends. And the other friends that I used to do all the drugs with, you know what I mean? I couldn't be that way with them, but they were still our friends, you know what I mean? Because they were his friends first. So they were still the people we hung out with. But so I couldn't do anything around them. And I had some friends from cleaning the houses and stuff that I so I'm always having to look somewhere else to latch on somewhere else because I can't, you know, I've got to keep up the facade.
Yeah.
And so I would literally meet different and learn new things that I had not experienced before.
Been exposed to.
And so when she shot herself up for the first time and I saw instantly what it did to her and how it made her feel, I was like,
and
I'm wasting my money. This is stupid. I'm going to do it because she's got the same thing that I do, spending a lot less, but looks like that and feels like that. Game over. I said, well, you're going to have to do it for me. And that was August of 2015. And when I will never forget, mixed up that Roxy and shot me up for the first time, that needle stayed in my arm every day, all day, until I got sober this last time, from 2015 to 2023, every day, all day. But it went from Roxy's. It went from Roxy's to, hey, same said person. Well, you know, I can tell you how to save even more money. She had started doing heroin at that point and was like, you know, heroin's way cheaper. We can do heroin and you don't have to spend as much money and it'll have a better effect, last longer. All the things you want to hear as an addict, less money, okay. You know, I'm still cleaning houses, so I'm still getting money from Dad, bashing Keith, acting like he's the worst husband on the planet, and he wasn't. But I had to tell them something so I could get what I wanted from them.
You know, it's so interesting. It's so insidious, this thing. I talk about addiction as the great con man, but you can, you know, as you're talking about this, you can really just see how deceptive it is because something inside you is telling you, I need solutions here. But instead of, it's keeping you so deceived. The solutions you're seeking are financial. How can I do that? But something inside you is telling you this has got to change, but the change it deceives you with is, you just need to find a more affordable way to do it, right? I mean, just so
well, and two, it's because I knew at that point, I knew 100% what withdrawals were. Yeah. And I didn't want to be sick, point blank at all. Sure. I wasn't going to be sick. So whatever I had to do. So I still had Dad giving me money and Keith giving me money. And I'm still taking my kids to church. And I'm shooting up in the bathroom of my house, and I'm going out like the best dressed mom with my kids and my husband. We're going to church, and I'm singing on the praise team, and I'm in the altars, and I'm doing the drama team, and I'm doing the small groups.
You're shooting heroin.
And I'm shooting heroin.
And how are you feeling up there? Part of the praise? Yeah.
But I knew I couldn't just walk away from it because that's what I'd been doing, and I'd been clean. Remember, I'm clean. Like, we had a new baby in 2013. I'm clean. We're this amazing little family. I can't just step away from it. They're going to want to know why. That's going to cause red flags, questions. I can't.
But the weight of the shame and the guilt is just
horrible. I hated myself.
Yeah.
I was hating myself, hated everything that I stood for, knew I was a terrible person, wanted to stop, but just didn't want to be sick.
Right.
Hey, everybody, there's the end of part one. And boy, what a time to take a breath. But let me tell you, Kristy Bell's story is not over yet. So if you thought this was something, tune in next week because she is just getting started. So stay tuned for a clip for next week's episode.
I knew I was going to die with a needle in my arm, so I didn't want them to have to go through that. So I walked away. I just walked away, never called them again. I said, my kids will be okay over time without this destructive me that they have. People would see me on the news and be like, you're that girl from... They would run missing person report after missing person report after missing person. Have you seen this woman? Collages of me and my kids, you know, they're not hearing from me with no contact, almost 3 years. So they had finally stopped filing missing persons reports because I was presumed dead.